Today, we're jumping into a currency experiment that starts with well, a really strange problem. Imagine you're at a shop, you buy something, and you pay with, say, a US dollar. But instead of getting local coins back for change, the cashier hands you a few pieces of candy, or maybe a pen.
And this wasn't just a quirky thing that happened once. This was the reality. It was the everyday experience for people in Zimbabwe, and it was a direct symptom of the catastrophic failure of their old currency, the Zimbabwean dollar.
Exactly. That small transaction, getting sweets instead of money, it tells you everything about the complete collapse of trust.
It really does. And it was that failure that basically forced the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe to do something drastic.
Yeah.
So on April 5th, 2024, they announced a totally new system.
A system backed by actual physical assets. They called it Zimbabwe Gold, or just ZiG.
Right. And our mission today is to unpack this.
Yeah.
Because on paper, it's a brilliant idea. It's built on massive reserves.
But in reality, public skepticism is everywhere, and people just aren't using it. So we need to figure out that disconnect. How is this currency so different, and what does it really take to build back belief in a system that's failed so many times before?
Let's start with that name. Structured currency. It's meant to sound solid, right?
It sounds very deliberate.
And it is. Unlike the old currencies, the ZiG is explicitly anchored. Its exchange rate is pegged to a basket of foreign currencies and, crucially, to the price of gold. The official rate is, set every day based on what happens in the interbank market, so it's not some arbitrary number plucked out of the air.
Okay, and this is where it gets really compelling for me. The Reserve Bank didn't just say it was backed by gold. They actually showed their cards, so to speak.
Yeah.
What are the actual assets behind the ZiG?
The backing is, it's huge. They're holding $900 million in cash reserves.
Okay, 900 million.
And on top of that, 3,577 kilograms of physical gold.
Which is what, about 3.5 tons?
About 3.5 tons, yeah. Valued at another $440 million. So you're looking at a total asset base over $1.3 billion.
That sounds like a lot. But how does it stack up against what they actually need? I mean, how much ZiG is out there?
And that's the key question. This is the crucial part. The total amount of ZiG in circulation only requires about $90 million of cover.
Wait, 90 million?
90. So if you do the math, they're holding more than 4 times the required minimum cover.
4 times.
Yeah.
So on paper, this thing should be rock solid. It's over-collateralized.
Massively. Theoretically, it should be incredibly stable.
And the notes themselves, they're pretty standard, right?
Mhm.
Denominations from 1 ZiG up to 200.
Yep. But the structure is only half the story. A currency is only as good as the market that lets you, trade it. And that's the other big change they made.
This is a huge policy shift, especially after their other attempts to manage exchange rates failed so badly.
It is. They've moved to what they call a market-determined exchange rate. Basically, it's a transparent system called the willing buyer, willing seller arrangement.
Okay, before we get into how the new system works, let's just quickly touch on the old one, the auction system from 2020. Why did that fail so spectacularly?
In a word, rigidity.
Right.
The idea was to auction off foreign currency, but it was too centralized, and the minimum bid requirements were they're way too high.
So if you're like a small local farmer and you just need a few hundred US dollars for seeds, you're just out of luck.
Completely locked out. So where do you go?
The black market.
The black market, which offered better rates anyway.
Yeah.
So it created this dual system that just starved the official market of any real liquidity.
So this willing buyer, willing seller system is designed to fix that by, decentralizing it. How does it actually work for someone on the ground?
It's all about using the local banks as matchmakers, basically. The banks match people who want to sell foreign currency, like an exporter who just got paid in dollars, with people who need to buy it, and they do it at the official rate.
Ah, so instead of one big clunky auction once a week, you have thousands of smaller transactions happening all the time, which should, in theory, reveal the true market price.
That's the idea. More organic,
Yeah.
more transparent.
And to make sure this all works, there are some pretty strict rules for businesses, right? To sort of force demand for the ZiG.
Oh, absolutely. The framework is designed to make sure ZiG circulates. The Reserve Bank itself provides liquidity using a quarter of all export money. And here's the kicker. Local businesses have to convert at least 25% of whatever they earn from exports back into ZiG.
So that creates a constant baseline demand. You can't just operate entirely in US dollars.
Exactly. The policy is trying to make ZiG essential for doing business inside the country.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got massive reserves, 4 times what's needed. We have a new transparent market system. And yet, Here's the paradox we talked about at the start. Nobody seems to want it.
This is where theory just collides head-on with reality. Nationwide adoption is stalled at around 40%. And if you look at the real sign of trust people willingly converting their dollars into ZiG, that number is only about 30%.
So most people are still just sticking with US dollars or South African rands.
They're clinging to them, yeah, because they trust them more.
And the performance data since April, I mean, that's just got to be reinforcing all that doubt. How badly has the ZiG actually done?
It's catastrophic. Since it was introduced, the ZiG has weakened against the US dollar by 96%.
96. In just a few months. For a currency that's supposedly backed by billions in gold and cash.
96%. It completely undermines the entire narrative of stability they were trying to build.
That's just an incredible failure.
And what's really fascinating, or, deeply ironic, is that this collapse happened while the global price of gold was actually rising sharply.
So wait, the very asset that's supposed to be backing the currency got more valuable.
And the currency itself crashed.
How is that even possible?
Well, it tells you the market simply doesn't believe the peg is real. They're betting that the system isn't being managed the way it's described, or that those reserves aren't actually available to defend the currency.
That's the very definition of a crisis of confidence. The market is just calling their bluff. So what did the Reserve Bank do? They had to react, right?
They had to intervene directly. They reported injecting $50 million of their own foreign reserves straight into the market.
So they were basically buying up their own currency with dollars to stop the bleeding.
Exactly. And while that might create some temporary stability, every time you do that, you're burning through your precious reserves. It signals weakness, not strength.
And to defend the currency, they also have to keep interest rates punishingly high, don't they?
Oh, they're crippling. The rates tell a whole story. For businesses, you're looking at 46%. For individuals, it's nearly 50%.
50% interest? You can't run an economy on that. Nobody can afford to borrow money to invest or expand.
It chokes off almost all economic activity. But they feel they have to do it to fight the risk of hyperinflation.
And you can see why when you look at the dual inflation numbers. The latest figures for October really lay it bare.
They really do. If you measure inflation in US dollar terms, it was about 13%. Manageable, I guess.
Okay.
But if you measure it in the local currency, the ZiG, which is the headline inflation that people actually feel, it was 32.7%.
Wow. That gap shows you the penalty you pay for just holding the local currency.
It's the risk premium, and it's huge.
So what's the takeaway here? We have the system that was engineered on paper for perfect stability with 4 times the assets it needs, and yet it's an immediate catastrophic failure.
I think it means the fundamental problem for the ZiG isn't physical, it's institutional. The performance of the currency depends less on the gold bars in a vault and more on whether people trust the government to manage it properly and transparently.
And after so many years of failure, that trust just isn't there.
It's not. For the average person, the US dollar is a known, trusted thing. The ZiG, even with gold behind it, is just another liability managed by institutions that have failed them before.
We've seen the theory, a currency backed by massive reserves, and the reality, a 96% collapse.
And it brings you back to that fundamental question. Why, given the explicit gold backing, do people still prefer a worthless piece of candy over their own national currency? It shows you that a currency is never just about the assets. It is, and always will be, an instrument of trust. The physical peg is only as strong as the political will behind it.
And that leaves a final thought for you to explore on your own. Beyond reserves and clever policy, what is the one key factor? Is it time, consistency, political change that finally convinces a population to trust their own money again after decades of failure?